All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are here. We are here. It is week 0 of the college football season. I am joined by Ty Hayes from Around the Table Sports and my guy, Zachary Lancaster, OSU Fanatic, executive editor of the PokeReport.com, right?
Yeah, pokesreport.com. Yeah.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just had to say this real quick. It's been on my mind all day. I said, it is kind of weird. This world that we live in is weird, especially when you think that, man, Nebraska will be playing a primetime game that everybody will tune into. Nebraska. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But guys, I'll just pass the mic and just say, hey, first off, what are you guys most excited to see this season with your teams? Bama fans, OSU fans, OU fans. What are you guys excited to see this season for your teams, and then just kind of around the college football world?
Yeah, so I mean, looking at Alabama this year, you talk about one first and foremost, Bryce Young. What he did last year with an offensive line that, to put it as kindly as I can, was inconsistent. I mean, he was one of the most sacked and pressured quarterbacks in the nation and still led that team to a national championship, won a Heisman. That kid is incredible, and he's so much fun to watch. I mean, he's electric. When the play breaks down and he leaves the pocket, I mean, you just sit at the edge of your seat because you know his ability. But coming into year 2, can the hire of Coach Wolford shore up that offensive line? Then you look at the transfer portal, right? We all know Nick Saban, right? He's kind of the Grinch of college football in a way, right? But how often have we heard Nick Saban laud over a transfer in the manner he's talked about Jahmyr Gibbs? That guy lights up anytime they bring up Jahmyr Gibbs. He's super high on him. And as a Bama fan, I'd be honest, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Will Anderson. I believe he's the best player in college football. Obviously, I hang that Bama sign behind me so that my bias is out on Front Street. That way, if someone disagrees, they can see why I might come from a different area than they do and have a different view on it because of my bias. But let's be honest, Will Anderson's incredible. And as far as the season goes, man, you look at Oklahoma, you look at Miami, you look at USC, you look at Oregon. There are so many new faces, Notre Dame, LSU. It's a season where if you're really wanting to get into college football, this might be one of the best seasons to do so in a long time because of the amount of excitement.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, you look at the hype. I mean, I think Chris, I think you started off pretty well when you talk about Nebraska having a primetime game. To be fair, it's primetime because it's in Ireland, and if you look at the slate of games, it's okay. It makes sense. Nebraska Northwestern. That's probably the game most people are going to watch. But when you look at across the landscape, Penn State should be better. Hopefully, their offensive line's a little better, and the Big Ten a little bit more competitive. Michigan, you look at what they did last year, beating Ohio State for the first time, and God knows how long. You look at Oklahoma State, and they repeat from what they did last year. I don't think this defense. It's hard for me to sit here and say the defense is going to be as good as they were last year, but I think they're going to be better than people think. There's a lot of talent on that defensive side of the ball. The transition from Jim Knowles to Derek Mason has pretty much been seamless. You talk to all the guys, the terminology is virtually the same. The plays are virtually the same. The scheme is the same. Now he's thrown his flavor onto it. It's more so Derek Mason than it is Jim Knowles, but it wasn't necessarily Jim Knowles' defense. They took some from Greg Richmond, the defensive line coach, Joe Bob Clements, the defensive line coach. They took some from Tim Duffy, the corners coach, Dan Hammerschmidt, the safeties coach, kind of melded it all together. All of those guys are still there. They had no turnover except for Jim Knowles, who went to Ohio State. Great coach, got to miss him, but I think Derek Mason is going to have a lot of success on that defensive side of the ball. So obviously Spencer Sanders coming back, he's set to have another really good year. I mean, Dylan Gabriel, I think he's going to be really good at OU this year, and that'll be the competition. But when you look at Adrian Martinez, I don't want to be negative about him, but he's injury prone, he's turnover prone. So I don't know how good Kansas State is going to be on offense. I think they're projected to be good, and I think they're always going to be tough, but I can't sit here and say just how good they're going to be. You look at JT Daniels, how good is West Virginia going to be? But I think Spencer is set here for a really solid year, and they got to figure out running back and offensive line has to stay healthy. But other than that, I don't think 10 wins is out of the realm of possibility for Oklahoma State. Just looking
So
at the schedule.
let me be the one that I have to rain on your parade about that. Okay.
Here we
Now
go.
there are some people who on here, this guy, and then some other people as well who are gonna watch this video and gonna say, Zach, you kind of be with Zach. Hold on now. Spencer Sanders, really good season.
Yeah.
I mean, last year was kind of up and down in my book. I think
Well,
that
it wasn't really the only bad game he had was the two Baylor games. You win the first one, and they didn't lose that Big 12 championship game because of him. Yeah, he had turnovers, but you can't have I think 8 straight plays in the red zone. Maybe not 8 straight, but you had 8 plays in the red zone, and he doesn't have 1 carry. You're throwing to a defensive end, and you're trying to run around the end, but you don't have your starting center. So you're playing a kid that didn't really play center last year, and you're going up against Asi from Baylor, who
Yeah.
anybody's lunch. It doesn't matter
now
who.
Zach, he threw 4 picks. He threw
I know.
4
I know that's
interceptions.
what I'm saying,
He
but
threw
they didn't.
4 interceptions.
I'm not arguing that, but when you look at what he did the rest of the season, they had 12 wins. They beat OU, who was a top 10 team. They beat Texas, top 25 at the time. They beat Kansas State, a top 25 at the time. They beat Baylor the first time, a top 25 at the time, and then they beat a top 3 all-time program with probably the greatest win, or for sure the greatest comeback against Notre Dame that we've seen in Oklahoma State history.
Notre Dame. I still look at Marcus Freeman like, hey, you did not have to blitz him, but they came after him that entire second half, and you're sitting there just thinking to yourself, hey, they're letting you run these blitz. That your linebackers are slow; they can't get home. He's just literally running up the middle. It was the same play for like at least 3 or 4 plays in one drive, and I was just like, this is crazy. Now, I will say this right here. I think that, am I wrong in saying you guys go to Baylor, I think week 4, correct?
Week 5, yeah.
Week 5.
Yeah.
So that will be a test. You know, I was going to looking at your schedule. I marked this game last year. Ty and I talked about it, but that Arizona State game was going to be the game that I said, hey, that tells me a lot about what OSU is going to bring to the table this year. However, that's kind of in question now, seeming the whole debacle that has went down with Arizona State. I think Herm Edwards is still going to field a good team, but you don't lose that many position coaches, that many coaches that were vital to your program
And talent.
Sustain. Yeah, and talent as well. So I don't know. It's going to be hard because we know that OSU, we know what Gundy notoriously does against Tulsa, Central Michigan, people like that. He goes out there, is extremely vanilla. Let's take the top off of the defense or whatnot. Let's test them a little bit. I think that with OSU, I still think that Spencer Sanders can be a liability. He can win or he can cost you games. I think that people are going to be keying in on Warren this year. I think Warren is he's your starter, right? He's back, correct?
No, he's playing with Pittsburgh this year, and he's in the 2 deep. He'll make the 53. He'll play.
I thought Warren was still there.
No, so for me, when you look at I have no question that receiver. I know they lost Tay Martin, 1,000-yard receiver, but Casey Dunn, probably the best receiver coach in the country. He's always going to have talent. You look at the breakout season that Jaden Bray had last year as a freshman. He's going to be solid. You've got Brennan Presley inside. He's going to be solid. John Paul Richardson had a breakout. You've got Braden Johnson back. Now, there is no 1,000-yard receiver right now. You are going to have to figure out receiver. But with Casey Dunn, I don't have questions. I don't have a question about Spencer. If the offensive line stays healthy, I think the line could be better than last year. There's question on defense, but there's talent and there's potential. So those guys just need to figure it out. But when you look at running back, you got a guy who the projected starter is Dominic Richardson. He's had 2 really good games in his career at Oklahoma State. I think he's a redshirt sophomore, redshirt junior. He had a really good game in 2020 against Baylor, who was decimated. Yeah. But so I can't look at that game and say, okay, he's really good. He played against a COVID decimated Baylor team in 2020, and they were bad even if they'd had all their starters. And then he had a really good game last year, but it was against TCU. And there's two factors there. TCU, they weren't very good last year, and he was committed and signed to TCU. And then they pulled his scholarship to bring in Zach Evans. So that was a revenge game for him.
Yeah. So one thing I have a question for Zach.
Yep.
Whenever we're talking impact of loss, what's the bigger loss here? The guys who you lost in that defense, right?
Mhm.
Whether it be went to the next level, whether that be who hit the transfer portal or the loss of Knowles himself. Which do you place as the bigger impact this season?
You would think it would be Jim Knowles, but when you listen to all the players talk, he put and you can't discount it, right? Because he put it all together.
No doubt.
He took everything from position coaches. He took Malcolm Rodriguez. I thought Malcolm was going to be good anyway. I don't think I ever expected Malcolm to be, one of the top linebackers in the entire country, not just the Big 12, but one of the in the country. When you look at what he did with Colin Oliver off the edge, when you look at what he did with Brock Martin, you look at the safeties, the corners. I mean, Oklahoma State has always had good defensive players, but they've never had a really good defense. There's one-offs, 2011 was a really good defense. I think 2014 or 2015, like they've had a good team every now and then. But the first year that he came in, they were so. That next year they were a little bit better. 2020, they were pretty good. And I didn't know if you could get better than 2020 because as covering Oklahoma State, being an Oklahoma State fan, you're thinking this is probably the best we're going to see from a defense. And then they went out there and put out a top 2, top 3 defense in the country. I mean, it was insane how good they were. But when you talk to the players, all the returners, I don't know if I think the transfers are going to hurt them more than losing Jim Knowles because the system's the same. You look at Derek Mason's numbers. I know he didn't have a ton of success at Vanderbilt, but the numbers were there. You look at
Vanderbilt too.
I mean, he had first-round picks though at key positions on defense. You can go through. Yeah, I mean, I don't think the loss.
I don't think the loss of Knowles is bigger than you lose Tanner McAllister to Ohio State. He was one of the better safeties in the Big 12.
That's the one.
You lose Jark Bernard Converse, one of the better corners in the Big 12. Now he got burned a lot, but when you look at Christian Holmes, what he did, he didn't have many targets because he was a lockdown corner. So Jark got thrown to a lot. He transfers to LSU. You lose 2 linebackers that combined for 219 total tackles. And I think they had like 26 or 27 tackles for loss. So Devin Harper I don't think he's signed. I think he was a free agent for the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know if he'll make the roster, but I think he can make the practice squad. You look at Malcolm Rodriguez. I always thought Malcolm would make the roster for the Lions, but I thought he was going to be more special teams. No, he'll be a starting linebacker. Yeah, he's insane. So, and then more on the back end, you lose Trey Sterling, who was injured last year, but had he not gotten injured, I thought Trey would have been I'm not saying he would have won it, but he'd have been a candidate for the Defensive Player of the Year last year in the Big 12. And then you lose Kobe Harvell-Peel. Harvell-Peel, his sophomore year had 9 or 10 pass breakups. You look at last year, he was really solid. So, I mean, you lost 7 really good on the back end, and that's not including what you lost on the front line. So transfers and guys going to the NFL, that'll be the biggest loss there because they're really young. There's potential, but they're young.
So I got 2 questions for you. The first one is really brief, just simple yes or no. Is Trace Ford back this year?
Yeah.
Is he healthy?
Not only is he back, like he hasn't lost a step. It's crazy to me because he tears his ACL in 2020 against Baylor, tears his other ACL at the beginning of last year, and everyone he was a monster that redshirt freshman year in 2020, and everyone kind of was like, well, that's awful. But you get Colin Oliver. Everything we heard through summer is that he was healthy, he was ready to go, and then we've seen him in fall camp. He is a nightmare. I don't know how Greg Richmond's going to do it, the defensive line coach. And I'm not sitting here because I'm an OSU fan or because I'm covering OSU. They're going to have a top 2. They'll be a top 3 defensive line in the country, and they won't be number 3.
Really
interesting.
You got Brock Martin back. You've got Tyler Lacey, who they put 20 pounds on, and they moved inside to the 3 tech, but he can still rush the outside. You've got Colin Oliver back. You've got Trace Ford. You have Nathan Latu, who's the brother of Alabama's Latu.
Cameron Latu. Yep.
This
beast.
He's a nightmare. When you look, and Latu looks the part. Nathan Latu looks the part. He is rich.
They're both so athletic, man. It's wild how athletic those dudes are, and they both carry frame. Like, what do you want to do with them?
So Oklahoma State is easily too deep on the defensive line, and at some places they're like they'll rotate in, and they're going to absolutely wear offensive lines down. That defensive line, I have no concerns, I have no worries, and I'm not sitting here trying to hype it up. The defensive line will be better than they were last year. 100%.
So let me ask you this question here, okay? I think this is the one that kind of that really just encompasses everybody's thoughts right now. On the road against Baylor, at home against Texas, on the road against OU. How confident are you about those 3 games? Because it's different from just playing at home. Yeah. And now let's just be real. There are some fans out there who are still a little bit skeptical about the calls down the stretch in that OU game, especially this guy. I think that we lost that game when we lost momentum when Riley put Gray back there to field that punt, and he muffed it. That's whenever we really lost momentum. However, there was some questionable calls down there, or the lack of calls in that game. I'll just throw that out there. But my whole thing is that's pretty tough saying, okay, Baylor, with how hype everybody is on Baylor, Ty, you can roll your eyes. So how hype everybody is on Baylor. And then also, I mean, Texas, I know Texas coming up there, but Texas fans are hyping the hell out of them. They won the offseason championship again. And then coming to OU this year, those are 3 big games on your schedule that you're like, hey, that's a bit of games, and then you throw in the games in between. So I mean, I'm not really sure what your schedule is like, or where all these teams are at on your schedule. I know OU is like middle of the year. I'm not sure where Texas is at, but that's something to think about.
So I will start off by saying there were a handful of offsides penalties that were not called that resulted in Oklahoma State turnovers in the favor of OU. There will always be no calls that you could look at. So there were 3 or 4 offsides that weren't called. I'll just start with that. So I'm glad you brought up this, because you mentioned Arizona State. So Oklahoma State should, in theory, on paper, start 3-0. Right? Central Michigan, you're not going to have another 2016. First of all, you shouldn't have been in that situation. I don't care if it was or not. I mean, I still got video of it. I was in the end zone.
There's missed calls that just won't.
First of all, it never should have been a MAC crew. You should have never had it. I think that was a part of the agreement, part of the contract, that Central Michigan, they were going to have at least one game with MAC officials, and that's the call that they had. I don't know. I'm not going to go down that path, because it's still a sore subject for a lot of Oklahoma State fans. Anyway, Oklahoma State should be 3-0. They have an off week, and then they go to Baylor October 1st. There are 3 games. For me, there's 3 games on the schedule that I'm not going to chalk up as losses. But when you look at this schedule, there's 3 games that Oklahoma State could lose, but I think they win the rest and they win a bowl game and you finish 10-0. So when you're looking at it, you've got Baylor in Waco, you've got Kansas State in Manhattan, and you have OU in Norman. That's the second to last game of the year. So when you look at those 3 games, I don't think they lose all 3. They're going to win at least one. Now, is that going to be Baylor? Because there are some offensive questions around Baylor. I think their defense is going to be good. Their offense is still good. Dave Aranda is still good. But what are the questions there? When you look at Kansas State, what's Adrian Martinez going to do? What's that? Is Kansas State 6 to 7 all Big 12 players? Like, are they that good? And then OU. When you listen to what Venable said, they return, I think it was 40% of their scholarship players from last year. They had coaching turnover. You have quarterback turnover. I don't think OU will ever be rebuild. I think OU will always be reload, but I think there's still questions there. Now, it's at the end of the year, so OU has they have a chance to get their offensive line in order. They have a chance to get Dylan Gabriel comfortable. They have a chance to fix the speed D on the other side of the ball. I know Kchris just loves that speed D over there. So
no. We're not doing speed D no more. It's ruthless.
Oh, my mistake.
Suffocating defense. It's back, baby.
Yeah, okay. Now, so I think next year, I think next year OU is going to be really good. This year, I'm not saying that I don't think they're going to be good, but I think there are enough questions that you can look at those 3 road games for Oklahoma State and say, okay, each place has questions. They're probably not going to lose all 3. So what game are they going to win?
Mm-hmm.
I think Texas is the biggest conundrum, the biggest enigma that I've ever known, because I cover recruiting. So there's either, my theory on Texas is there's either the recruiting rankings are incredibly flawed, which we all know that's probably not true, because the way Texas recruits, they should be winning a national championship every 3 or 4 years. They bring in some of the best players, or Texas is the most overhyped and overrated program in the history of college football, because the way Texas recruits, the way they put together coaching staffs, there's no way they should go 5-7 and lose to Kansas at home. So when you bring in, I don't care how hyped he is, when you bring in what should be a true freshman quarterback, I know he was great in high school. He didn't do anything at Ohio State besides get $3 or $4 million and then come back. Is he going to be good? Yes. But, and I'm sure that there's people that are going to take this recording and they're going to say, listen to what you said on August 27th. I don't know how good Texas is going to be. So when I look at that schedule, Oklahoma State has Texas for homecoming October 22nd. I mentioned the 3 games that Oklahoma State could potentially lose, and Texas isn't there. I think Texas will be a good game, but I don't think Oklahoma State loses that game. I think it's going to be good. I'm not saying that Oklahoma State's going to blow them out of the water, but when you look at the success that OSU has had against Texas in the last 10 years, this isn't early 2000s Oklahoma State, Texas, where OSU jumps up 35 points and Texas comes roaring back and wins every game. This Oklahoma State is really successful against Texas, and I think it'll be a good game, but I don't think OSU loses.
So Ty, I want you to jump in there and just kind of give us what's your honest thoughts, kind of just piggybacking off of what Zach has said already, but also what's your honest thoughts about Texas in general this year?
Yeah, so look, I'm not going to defend Texas, but there is one thing that I always want to bring people's attention towards, because it kind of piggybacks off of something Zach said whenever we're talking about the recruiting rankings. And the one thing we need to realize with Texas and the way they recruit is there has been a complete shift in the recruiting philosophy since this new staff was there. Now, whether it pans out or not remains to be seen. They still have to go out there and develop and fix all the wrongs that have been piled up at Texas, right? It's not like there's only been one coaching staff that had a down 5-year stretch at Texas. We're talking multiple coaching staffs that have implemented their thing, and now Sark has to try and go through all that and implement his. So whether they recruit right or not, there's still a lot they need to do. But I want to bring our attention back to the recruiting, because Nino's Corner made a fantastic video that I think is so eye-opening, where he was talking about how, yes, Texas, and it piggybacks off of something I had been saying, and then he took it a step further. Texas was recruiting talent. They weren't recruiting for need, right? Like, they were just, if you looked at their classes during Tom Herman, Charlie Strong, it was a collection of talent, as opposed to you look at it and you say, okay, well, they have major need along the defensive front, and they're just not going out there and getting that. They're just star chasing, essentially, right? And then mixed on top of that, they had a real hard time developing. But the one area where it became so telling that Texas is just star chasing as opposed to recruiting to need, they have the lowest rate of offensive line acquisition and recruiting in, I think, the nation, right? And it was something to where it was easily the lowest in the Big 12, to where even Kansas was clipping offensive linemen at a higher rate than Texas was. And it was really telling as to why Texas has struggled so bad. Now, like I said, and I started this, I'm not here to defend Texas, because everything you said is apt, right? Like, they still need to go out there. They need to do a lot, but I very much well am interested in this staff and how they're recruiting, because Kyle Flood, when he was at Alabama, he put together an offensive line class that at the time I considered to be the greatest offensive line class ever assembled. Number 1 tackle in the nation, number 2 tackle in the nation, number 1 center in the nation, number 2 guard in the nation, all in the same recruiting class for the Crimson Tide. The very next year, he goes to Texas and gets his full class there, and that's where we see Texas just get Campbell, Banks, all these dudes. that guy and Kyle Flood, he can coach and he can recruit at a very high level. And we can even go back to his time at Rutgers to see that. So I'm very interested into what Texas is going to be. I completely agree with Zach. It's next to impossible to say where they're going to be or how good of a team they're going to be. Because on one half, if this offensive line comes together and gives them some time, they have really good skill positions, right? The running back room is really good. Unfortunately, Nayor gets that injury, but if Nayor was healthy, I mean, their wide receiver room is deep.
Yeah.
Tight end position is looking good, but it's all reliant on that offensive line. And I'm never comfortable in saying a bunch of young guys on the offensive line are going to be able to give you the adequate protection needed, especially at that position where there's such a massive difference in size, speed, strength, technique required to be successful at the collegiate level. So Texas, I think the word right out of my mouth, I love that he is an enigma. Like I love that you describe them as an enigma, because even though I'm quote unquote high on Texas, it's high on Texas for the next 5 to 6 years, so long as they let Sark do his thing and don't rush him. That's my biggest question. I don't know that people kind of realize how much Sark has to pile through before he can really start laying an adequate foundation. And we know that is not a patient fan base or institution. And
Well,
they
got a lot of donors with a lot of money that have
a lot of money.
Now they say now they say, hey, hold on. Now they say that they don't. They say that's a myth. They say that's false. And I'm
It's
like,
not
hey,
true. That's not true. There's no way. I mean, I'm not saying that Tom Herman was a great coach, but they gave him he had no authority. Now, Sark, I think, is a better coach than Tom Herman. If Sark doesn't pan out, he's probably not going to be, he's probably going to get another coaching job. He's probably not going to struggle to get another coaching job. But I agree with what you're saying, Ty, with recruiting. I think that they do recruit really well. And that's something like if OSU landed, because OSU goes up against
good God.
probably half the kids that Texas lands, OSU are going after, and they're in their final groups. If OSU landed half the kids,
it'd be terrifying.
Oklahoma State would win a national championship within 2 years. And I'm not trying to say that, but you look at what Gundy does. You take a guy like James Washington out of 2A Stanford that no one had ever heard of and wins a Biletnikoff. I know Tylan Wallace was a 4-star, but when you look at what he did with Tylan Wallace, you look at what he did with Jalen Warren,
Justin Blackman.
I mean, you look at all the guys that Oklahoma State has taken that they've turned into, national award winners or finalists.
No doubt.
If they landed half the guys at Texas.
Now that's one thing
True.
that I think OU fans, we all would say for sure. Look, granted, I think I definitely still have some words to say to Gundy about his whole, they took the money and ran, that comment and some of the other things. Now, I will say this about Gundy. Gundy's a good coach. Or at least he's a good developer. However, I think just as many questions that we have. Look, Ty has said it again times a million about he said this about the Big 12. The Big 12 it's not wide open, but there is a lot of intrigue with this league this year because
it could cannibalize itself.
Yeah, everybody literally has questions about their team. And even though you guys are returning this or returning that, or you feel like it's a seamless fit, Spencer Sanders still has been a thorn in your side for a long time.
I don't think he was last year, though.
So we could go off of last year. We can go off of the year before. We can compare and contrast. He's been up and down his entire career.
So 2019, he's a redshirt freshman. I'm with he never should have played in 2018, ever. I thought that Taylor Cornelius was the right choice. Cornelius was the choice to start that freshman year instead of Mason Rudolph. That the year that they beat OU with Tyreek Hill. Yeah. The punt return with Tyreek Hill.
Oh, yeah.
If Taylor Cornelius had the 4 years that Mason Rudolph did, I personally believe Taylor Cornelius would have been a better quarterback. He's bigger, he's stronger, he's faster, he has a better arm, he has a better over the middle route. So that's a rabbit hole I don't need to go down. But he should have started in 2018. You look at his stats; he threw for almost 4,000 yards. I mean, he was a good quarterback. He just didn't have any experience. So Spencer should have never played in 18. I agree with that. 19, he was young. Texas Tech, I think he had 4 or 5 turnovers. He was atrocious, but he got a little bit better with each week. He hurts his thumb in October, I think is when that was. October, November, misses the rest of the season. 2020 misses a couple of games due to injury, and then got a little better as the season went along, and then had a really good game against Miami in the Camping World Bowl, or the Cheez-It Bowl, excuse me. Beats Miami, and then comes back last year, misses the game due to COVID, and then the second half of Texas is where the flip switched. You know, they were struggling against Texas, and then that second half, Jaylen Warren rushes for like 200 yards. Spencer doesn't really make mistakes in the second half. He doesn't make mistakes against Iowa State. They didn't lose that game because of him. When you look at Spencer, first half Texas to Iowa State, he was poised in the pocket. He wasn't trying to force balls. He was throwing the pass. He was throwing them away, throwing them out of bounds if there was any pressure. He was only sacked 17 times last year, which is one of the fewest amounts in the nation, not just the Big 12, but in the nation. His decision making got a lot better. And so when you look at what he can do through the air, when you look at what he can do on the ground, if the offensive line stays healthy, I think Spencer is going to be better this year than he was last year.
We shall see. We shall see, because I just can't buy that much stock in it. And maybe
I'm not saying
you're talking the logistics of it, and it all makes sense. And I see where you're coming from. I see your angle. I'm just saying that off of the eye test, he does not pass that at all. And
I'm not sitting here saying like he's probably not going to win national quarterback awards. But when you look at what he's done, when you look at his maturity, you know, last year, I think Texas was like his 20th game starting, and
everybody had a great game against Texas, especially in the second half.
But yeah, they all started with that pick 6 by Jason Taylor, he returns this year. I think that's a big play.
So what I would say also to this is a counterpoint to that is just this right here. Look, Gundy saved him an awful lot last year. They ran the ball. They would run Warren 30 plus times per game. And in a good chunk of the games you guys played last year, Warren was running the ball 30 plus times.
Oh, no question.
So it wasn't just like it was a lot of passing and everything. So he made plays when he had to make them. I'll give him that. However, to carry this team this year in the capacity that it seems like you're describing, I just don't see it. That's just me personally.
Well, I'm not sitting here. I'll never sit here and say that Spencer's going to throw for 4,000 yards. He's not going to be a pocket passer. Like when you look at what he did last year, he threw for 26, I think 2,600 yards, something like that. I don't know why their stats always take forever to load, but he threw for almost 2,900 yards and rushed for almost 700. You'll get more than that. I think Spencer he'll probably clear 3,000. Now you have to figure out what Tay Martin. You had to figure out that, right? But you have good receivers. If the offensive line stays healthy, I think he'll be good.
The Green Twins are I like them a lot.
Yeah, I think, and here's the thing. Here's a guy that no one talks about because he's been injured. He came in injured. He got into a car wreck before he showed up. Langston Anderson. If Langston Anderson is healthy, I personally think Langston is the best receiver on this team, but he's never, like last year, he broke his foot in warmups in the season opener. It's freak stuff. He just can't stay healthy. If Langston Anderson is healthy, he's had a monster fall camp and he's had a really solid preseason. So I personally think Langston Anderson is the guy, but that you got to stay healthy. But what's crazy to me, and OSU put this number out over the summer, I didn't realize this. Spencer Sanders needs 9 wins to surpass Mason Rudolph as the winningest quarterback in Oklahoma State history.
Wow.
And Spencer still has another season of eligibility after this year.
God, I hope he's going.
So where's he going to go? Spencer's not an NFL quarterback, and he's not big enough to do anything else in the NFL. He's not fast enough to do anything in the NFL. He does have a really good arm. Control has been an issue, and decision making's been an issue. But when you look at, he's matured a lot. He's figured it out. The game has slowed down a lot. I'm not saying that he's going to win national quarterback awards this year because he's probably not. He might win. He might win the like the sportsmanship awards, but Spencer is a good college quarterback, and he's gotten a lot better, and he'll be better this year than he was last year. He's not going to win national quarterback awards. He's not going to throw for 4,000 plus yards and 40 plus touchdowns, but Spencer will throw around 3,000 yards. He'll rush for 600 to 800 yards, and he'll combine for about 30 some odd touchdowns. And Spencer won't lose OSU a game.
So
like he didn't lose OSU a game last year. He won't lose OSU a game.
So okay. Now keep Baylor in mind, please. But
though.
So what I was going to say is this right here. So speaking of national quarterback awards, speaking of national, QB highlights, I think Ty knows where I'm going with this. DG for Heisman? No, I'm playing. That just went over Ty's head. So we can't.
Look, Dylan Gabriel, I think, is going to be in for a big season. He reunites with Jeff Lebby. If you look at it, even though he continued to evolve every season after Jeff Lebby left UCF, if we're really diving into the devils of the details, his most explosive season was with Jeff Lebby at UCF. And I can only imagine what would have happened if Lebby would have stayed there and they would have continued to grow together. But probably best case scenario for Lebby to work under Lane Kiffin, someone who there's an argument to be made about Lane Kiffin as a head coach. I don't think anybody in the nation is going to argue with me when I say Lane Kiffin's one of the greatest offensive minds in football, right? NFL, college. Lane, you might not like him as a head coach. He will destroy your defense and think nothing of it, right? Like that's an off day for him. So anybody that works with Lane Kiffin, I think you're going to pick up some really cool wrinkles, right? And I got a lot of respect for Lane Kiffin because he revolutionized Alabama's offense. So obviously I'm always going to have a soft spot for Kiffin. Yeah. I think Dylan Gabriel is going to be in for a huge year. And this is nothing against Gabriel, man, because I think he's so talented. I just think when you look at it, you have quarterbacks like CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, who are rare in what they bring to the table, right, in terms of skill set, and they're doing it in year 2. Like these guys, Gabriel is a fantastic quarterback. There's a lot of great quarterbacks out there, but CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, man, like when they take the field, I just sit back and watch because it's awesome. It's so cool. Those would be my 2 quarterbacks for Heisman.
No, and I was just teasing. I think that Dylan Gabriel is going to have a great year this year. I think that he will stay healthy. I think the offensive line is going to be way better this year. And that's not saying that they weren't under Riley or anything like that. I just think that with this new scheme, we talked about it at length. The zone scheme is much more. It's simplified. It's easier to understand. It's going to be way easier, and a lot of people are not going to be able to just sit there and game plan for the GT counter, GT pool, whatever you want to call it. A lot of the things, watching, like we said, Ty, watching Raleigh's offense, I wouldn't necessarily say it was just super predictable, but you could kind of tell, okay, I'm not sure who the ball is going to go to, whoever pops open, obviously, but you kind of knew the formations, different things like that when you saw those looks. If you go back to, I think,
especially once the depth at running back was just eviscerated, right?
It was
the play calling was very obviously timid at that point out of necessity.
I think going back to like the Ohio State game that Baker played in, I watched that game an awful lot, just on YouTube. And then if you go to the 2020 Bedlam game, you see a lot of the same plays being ran. So you see a lot of the out routes, or hey, I'm gonna hide this running back, or I'm gonna hide this. We're gonna do split sets with the running backs or whatnot. You kind of see those plays kind of pan out, little cheap pick plays and all the rest of that. And you kind of see the GT pool, GT county. You just see a lot of the same stuff. And then you go to the USC, spring game, and I'm like, oh man, I can tell exactly what play this was about to be ran. So it's one of those things where I don't want to just seem like I'm just bagging on him, but last year just was not the best season for Riley as far as play calling. I think we all can agree on that. But this year, I think with Lebby, I know some people have brought up the concern of, do you really want to be running that many plays? Do you really want to run, do that? But I think what Lebby's goal in every game is to get up quick so he can just pound the ball and run the clock out. I think
Levy
that's
runs a
be,
complicated offense too.
Yeah.
Like everything has to be in sync because if not, you can make mistakes going this fast, which is one of the reasons why I constantly bring up how important it is that he reunites with a quarterback that's already worked with him, right?
Yeah.
Like that has that level of understanding of this is what we need to do to be able to successfully move the ball.
Mhm.
I think that's one of the reasons why I have that next level confidence in Oklahoma, because even if they would have gotten Jackson Dart, right, who USC fans were very high on, deservedly so, right, whether he pans out at Ole Miss or not, he was very, very good at USC and looked to be a guy that could continue building. Even though I think he's a great quarterback, if OU would have ended up with him over Dillon Gabriel, I wouldn't be as high on the Sooners. Not saying I'd be far off, but I truly do believe that experience Dillon Gabriel has with Lebby is going to allow them to hit the ground running in a manner that they just would not be able to do so if anybody else was the quarterback. Maybe absent Caleb, right? Because Caleb fits what Lebby wants to do. Ironically enough, like Caleb does fit with what they want to do there, but like it just seems like a great fit.
What's your thoughts about OU? And then we'll let you out of here, Zach. What are your thoughts about OU? Any parting shots?
No, not really. I don't know how good OU is going to be this year. I think that's a lot of people. Like they return talent, and I'll go back to what I said. I don't think OU, even if they go to the SEC, like I don't know how much success they'll have year one, but I don't think OU will ever be a rebuild. I think with what OU has done over the decades, OU will always be a reload. I think this could be a reload year, but I still think they're going to contend for Big 12. I mean, when you look, Oklahoma State, I think is going to be good, but there are questions at running back. You've got to figure out the defense. There's a lot of talent there, but it's all young. It's inexperienced. You return some, I think the corners will be good. I think the defensive line will be great, but there's still questions. OU, there's questions, but I do think that they'll be good. Can I sit here and say that they're going to win 12, 13 games and play in the college football playoff? I don't think that's feasible right now. But if they, we get the middle of the season and they just look unstoppable, Dillon Gabriel doesn't miss a beat. He has a better year than he did last year. That starts to click. Venables starts to, the offense starts to roll. The defense starts to roll. Then maybe. But right now, I can't sit here and say that. But I think that's anybody. I just don't think you. Same with Texas. You can't sit here and say that Texas is going to compete for the Big 12 until you see it. So I don't have a lot of faith in OU, but that's because I have to see it.
Well, that's perfectly fair.
So I'll jump in now because I know that Zach has to go. But before you go, where can everybody find you at, man? Where can everybody come and follow you, find you, and all that, and find all your material?
Yeah, so we're at pokesreport.com. You can get us there. You can get me at Twitter at zlancaster91, and then you can follow us, Pokes Report. It's on Facebook, and then Pokes Report on Twitter as well. So, I appreciate you guys having me on. I had a lot of fun. I'm up against it today. This has been a crazy week because game week's starting, and then I'm on our main pregame show at the radio station. So I don't have the tailgate anymore. I got the main show, so I got a lot of work I got to get done this weekend. So I wish I could stay longer, but I appreciate y'all having me.
Oh man, it's been awesome. It's been
awesome.
I was gonna say if we're not game weeks are a little hectic, but like Wednesdays and Thursdays aren't too bad. So I mean, if y'all are going again, if y'all want to get me on again, I'd love to be on. So.
Well, I'm going to follow you on Twitter right after this. Let's plan on getting you on. I mean, obviously you with Kchris again, but let's plan on getting you on my channel as well, because I'm wanting to break into more Oklahoma State content. And I think it'd be great to pick your brains about the ins and outs of this team. And maybe after like week 2, whenever we can see some things come to fruition, I think it'd be a lot of fun, man. I think that'd be awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just let me know. Shoot me a message and we'll make it happen.
Sounds good.
All right.
Cool.
All right,
appreciate it, bro. We'll talk to y'all later.
Yes, sir.
So, Ty,
yes,
that
sir.
leaves us. I think that we should kind of
dynamic duo.
We were talking about the national quarterback scene and all the rest of that. Go ahead, gloat about Bryce Young. Tell us about how Alabama's going to win another national championship.
I don't know that. I don't know about winning another national championship. We do know Nick Saban revenge tours are real. That's a very real thing. And this team, from a talent perspective, is unreal. Wide receiver is a bit of a question. Not that the talent is a question. The experience is a question. Offensive line needs to massively improve. But, Kchris, I'll tell you what's so interesting, man. And it kind of sucks that we don't live super far apart. There's like an hour and a half on a bad day, right, between us. But I wish that I would have gotten to watch some of the film with you, because it was incredible. When I went back and rewatched Alabama's season, I got access to the all 22 cameras, right? So I got film for OU, Alabama with the full view. When you watch it through that, you start realizing Bama blew assignments more than they got straight up beat on the offensive line. Like, I'd watched 3 offensive linemen turn to the left, and then one guy just squeak right in behind the center because the center just missed the assignment or the guard missed the assignment. I think coaching can shore that up. But look, there's going to be a lot of good teams this year. So I think Alabama goes to the playoffs. Like, I'm very, very sure in my prediction they go playoffs. I'd love for them to win a national championship. There's going to be a lot of good football teams this year, man. It's just, as a Bama fan, you can afford me excitement about my quarterback when we've been such a defensive-centric team forever, and now we're getting quarterbacks like a Bryce Young. You know what I mean? Like, that makes me as a Bama fan incredibly excited. So very, very excited.
I was going to say, outside of Will Anderson, what can we expect from some of the key positions? Because, you know, obviously you guys have always had talented linebackers, but I think that, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys haven't had one this highly touted in a few years.
Will could be the best Bama defensive player of my lifetime. Yeah. I don't think that's a huge look. He's rivaling Derek Thomas numbers right now, right? Like, he had 17 and a half sacks last season. And it's not like the year before nobody knew who Will Anderson was. The year before, he had 8.5 sacks as a true freshman who didn't play the full season. But outside of Will Anderson, Chris, this is where it gets interesting. Because if I tell you, okay, you're going to play Bama, a lot of people's first inclination is going to be, okay, we're going to double Will and run it away from him. You can do that. Go on right ahead. You're going to be running towards Dallas Turner now, who had 8.5 sacks as a true freshman, and he didn't start until game 4 or 5. And he just went off. Dallas Turner's over there, and I've only heard great things about him. What's scarier right now is Alabama's working on a package, and I can't wait to see it. They're going to have Dallas Turner, Will Anderson, and Chris Braswell on the field at the same time. Ladies and gentlemen, Will Anderson was the number 1 edge rusher in the nation in his class, 5-star. Chris Braswell was the number 2 edge rusher in the nation in that same class, 5-star. Dallas Turner was the number 1 edge rusher in his class, 5-star. There's going to be 3 edge rushers on the field that were all top 3 edge rushers in their respective classes as 5-stars. And Dallas Turner, and Chris Braswell is actually the strongest out of all of them. So defensive front is crazy. We actually have a freshman defensive lineman, man, to keep your eye out on, Jaheim Otis. Kid came in like close to 400 pounds and has lost something like 55 pounds over the offseason because he is a grinder. Saban cannot stop singing his praises. But if you're just asking me about a player right now that if I could tell you that I think is going to set the nation on fire, it's Jahmyr Gibbs.
Okay.
You listen.
I mean, you could use him at all in any position. I mean, like, he can kick return, he can punt return, he can do it all.
Speaking of a player we're using anybody, if you look back at that last Alabama class, they signed a 5-star running back, Emmanuel Henderson, right?
Yeah.
He's not with the running backs right now, Chris. He's working with the slot wide receivers, and apparently he's a dude. Apparently they're saying he is a dude out there in the slot. Now, granted, when you ever listen to Nick Saban talk about Emmanuel Henderson, he always referred to him as an athlete. So that's not super surprising, but it is surprising to see how well he's doing. This is going to be such a fun Bama team, man, because
hold on. We're missing a position, okay? Safeties, corners.
Oh,
what's up with that?
So as far as
last year, you could kind of say I wouldn't even say it was a down year. I'd say it was a weird year, kind of. It was back weird. There. But
we injuries, man. Like it kept happening where one guy would get settled and then he'd get hurt, and then someone else would come in and then he'd get hurt. But it was okay because the first guy was just coming back from injury. So nobody ever really got to sit and learn and develop a full season at the cornerback position. But as far as safeties are concerned, Bama actually returns both safeties from last season. right? Jordan Battle, DeMarco Helms. Jordan Battle might be the number one safety off the board in next year's draft, right? He's got the size, speed, physicality, coverage ability, and run stopping ability. He's going to be a very talented player. At cornerback, look out for Kool-Aid McKinstry, number one corner in the nation last cycle, 5-star, really not last cycle, the cycle before. He was a true freshman last year. Really talented. Eli Ricks transfers over.
Yeah.
This is going to surprise some people, but right now, Eli's got to win that job. We're a week off from the season. Eli's got to win that job. Now, he's been injured. He's not really had the ability, but there are other guys that have really stepped up. Terrion Arnold is a guy that I personally believe could play star, could play dime. He could play nickel. Wherever you want him in the defense, put Terrion Arnold there. I do believe he has that level of talent. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, but one area for me in particular, man, I'm super keyed in on is wide receiver. Just because you lose Williams, you lose Mechie, you lose Slade Bolden, you even lose Jaleel Billingsley to the transfer portal. You get in Tyler Harrell, who's a legitimate speedster, averaged 31 yards per reception for a portion last season. You get in Jermaine Burton, who they say is an absolute grinder, but we've heard Nick Saban talk about these freshmen really, really highly. Anderson, Kendrick Law, Kobe Prentice, then there's Isaiah Bond and Shaz Preston. So, I mean, man, I just can't wait for next Saturday. As excited as I am for today, I can't wait for next Saturday.
Who do you guys play?
Utah State out the gate, which is a little weird because the past few seasons we've had a really strong opener. Granted, it's neutral, but like, I mean, you remember we opened a few years ago was the number one team, and we opened with Florida State, who was the number 2 team in the nation. Now, granted, Florida State didn't end up as a very good team that season, but it is going to be weird not having that big game.
So I guess my question for you guys down there in the SEC before we come down there is simply, are you okay, I'm gonna name a few teams. I just want to know, do they present a fear? Where is like your level of concern about these teams this year?
Okay.
Georgia, obviously. Let's say obviously Georgia.
Yeah.
Florida. LSU, Arkansas, and I'm throwing a wild card. Okay, I'm throwing a wild card. South Carolina. Oh, hold on. That's my wild card team, but you also got to throw in Tennessee. Sorry, you got to throw in Tennessee too.
Yeah. So, okay, I'll start with Georgia. I don't think I need to say too much on Georgia. Georgia's Georgia, right? Like every single year, you circle them. If we're gonna play them, you circle them. If we meet them, it'll be SEC championship game, and we'll go from there. But at the end of the day, it's Georgia, man. Like I'm not going to take anything away from the Georgia Bulldogs. I'm not even here to tell you like, oh, if we meet them this year, we're going to steamroll them. They beat us the last time, and I think Chris, you know me well enough at this point. I'm very much well of the mindset, even though I believe right now Alabama is a better team than Georgia this year. You got to show me, right? Yeah. Like the last time they played, Georgia beat us. So now you got to show me before I just outright am like, no, I'm not worried about Georgia. Florida is interesting. It depends on Anthony Richardson. Yeah. Because in theory, Anthony Richardson could be a demon for all of college football to have to deal with, in theory. But they're also kind of in a situation where they're going to have a new quarterback who doesn't have the experience, and they have a new coaching staff, right? So there's going to be a lot of there's going to be a lot of moving parts. I'm interested in Florida. I think Florida is going to be a team to watch, but I wouldn't say I'm scared of Florida this year one under Napier.
So here's the thing about Florida. I just want to point out, I think one of the things that I'm interested to see with that I think is an interesting point. Let me rephrase that. I think that Napier and Anthony Richardson are a match made in heaven.
Could be.
The reason why I say that is because if you look at what he was doing down there at Lafayette with that quarterback there, if he brings some of those same principles, I think he's going to be telling Anthony Richardson, opposed to what Dan Mullen was trying to do, we don't have to go fast. We don't have to do anything that's cute. I just need you A and B. Just connect. I just need you to be patient. I think he's going to tell him, hey, go through your progressions, do all the rest of those things. Trust me, I'm gonna trust you. Because if you look at the offense, because I watched those Texas games, I mean, let's just be real. I thought that last year, I thought that Napier and the Raging Cajuns, I thought they had a chance to go down there and beat.
It was a very good opener for Texas.
And so I think that was probably one of the poor performances I've seen that quarterback have. I can't think of his name down there for Lafayette, the one that was down there last year. But at the same time, I've seen that team, how they compete, and because they went in there and they beat Iowa State the year prior to last year. So you just like what you like what you see from his offense. It's really patient. It can be fast at times, but they're trying to work the field. They're trying to work every inch of the field so they can every yard of the field, go from that route. But they're trying to work every yard of the field, to get where they're trying to go. So I think that it will help Anthony Richardson just be able to, be under control and play under control. I think one of the biggest questions about Florida is I don't know who the hell they had a wide receiver. Because, I mean, they did lose. They lost some guys, obviously.
They feel good. When I talk to some Florida people, they feel good, but I'm still of the mindset I want to see it. And that's why I say, do I think Florida's making all the right moves? Yes, they're recruiting their state very well right now. So is Miami. And, I'm going to digress. I talked about it in the Makari Vickers video last night. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But kind of giving OU some props right now, one of the things that makes what OU is doing right now so impressive is that Brent Venables just got his 4th win in the state of Florida. Makari Vickers, Derek LeBlanc, Keon Brown, and Lewis Carter. Those are the 4. He is getting those wins in a year where Miami is recruiting Florida at an incredibly high level. Billy Napier in Florida is recruiting Florida at these Florida teams are putting up a wall or attempting to, and somehow Brent Venables has found his way in and is still winning the battles. I digress. I do think that's very telling, very impressive. But
yeah, it is.
Focusing back on Florida, they like what they have. I need to see it, though, right? That's why I say this year I'm not scared of Florida. I'm interested in Florida because I do think they're moving in the right direction. And if Anthony Richardson comes out there and he is the dude, he's going to be a problem for a lot of teams to try and stop. So Florida is a team to watch more so than I think they're like an adequate threat in the SEC to be able to win it all.
Tennessee, I know a lot of people are hyping up Tennessee this year.
Boy, Tennessee is one. Circle it. So if you're wanting to know which Bama games to watch this year, you as an OU fan, I already know you're circling the second one. But that Tennessee game, right? That's the one I would watch very closely, along with an Arkansas. I'll talk about Arkansas here in a bit. But what does Tennessee bring to the table? Well, you know better than most, Josh Heupel. Guy's very bright. That guy's got a very bright future in college football. They return a quarterback that was very good last year. This is going to be a team that could shake some things up in the SEC East. Now, whether they can beat Georgia or not, I don't know. Georgia pretty much handled them last year, but Georgia also lost a lot. So I'm really interested.
Early on, it was interesting just for like the first probably 5 or so minutes of the game.
It was interesting at first, and then it wasn't, right? It was interesting until it wasn't. But Georgia lost a lot. I still have faith in Georgia because what have we known with Georgia under Kirby Smart? They're going to send dudes to the NFL draft, and there's going to be more dudes that come up behind them. That's just kind of what they do. But even then, man, Tennessee, this is a great year to watch them and see what they do. I'm so glad you mentioned Arkansas because you hear me talk about it all the time. I'm really, really high on Arkansas, not in terms of like them winning a college football playoff game and going to a national championship. Certainly not like that, but if you've been observing Arkansas football over the past 5 years, it's hard not to like what Sam Pittman is doing there. I think they're going to have a really good quarterback this year. I do question their wide receiver play. I understand Hazelwood comes in there. He's a huge addition to that room. I need to see him put it together this year, right? Because he's very talented, has just been injured his whole career. That bug keeps biting him. And
we're on the same page about Arkansas. I think Arkansas has to get a vertical game this year. KJ Jefferson is going to, and that's not to say they didn't have that last year, but they were more focused on the run. I think KJ Jefferson, second, third year. I forget how many
If
years.
they still had Traylon Burks this year, I would up my level of worry from Arkansas to like, hey, that's a game you gotta watch because they could get in, they could mess some things up.
Anybody watching this video, I know some people say, well, they did have a vert game. Well, my whole thing is it needs to be more consistent. He has to show that he's a consistent passer, that he can make all the throws out there, which I think KJ Jefferson can. My whole thing is just where's that production going to come from in that wide receiver room? I like Jaden Hazelwood, but like you said, it's all about the injuries. I think defensively, you're confident enough.
They returned Catalan. Yeah, they got one of the best safeties in the game. He's so good.
Yeah,
he's so good.
And I think Odom knows what he's doing back there with the defense that he's running. It's a different style, but I think it's something interesting to see. So that is a game that people have. A lot of people talk about OU Nebraska being possibly being an upset alert game. Well, I mean, a lot of people have Arkansas and Alabama. Yeah, same thing. No doubt. So,
they've played us closer. Go back to that 2020 year, right? And I understand people are saying that year doesn't count. It's a COVID year. Everybody had to deal with COVID, so it does count, right? Bama was eviscerating teams, and then they got to Arkansas. And Arkansas actually did the best job that entire year of limiting Alabama was Arkansas. Mm-hmm. And if we fast forward to last year, they're a good team, man. Like Arkansas is one to key in on, and the last one being LSU. What do we know about LSU? They're going to have one of the strongest defensive fronts in the country. Mason Smith was a dude last year as a true freshman in an organization that had no stability. Mm-hmm. Because I can't say Ed Ogeron is a beacon of stability, right? Ed Ogeron is a beacon of lot. Stability is not one of them. He now has Brian Kelly. Regardless of how you feel about Brian Kelly, regardless of how we feel about Notre Dame and their inability to get over the hump, they still made it. And we know that it is very hard to get to the college football playoffs, right? How many great OU teams have you seen that you're like, this is a fantastic team that didn't make it, and that doesn't diminish how good OU was.
I don't want to talk
hard.
About it.
But you get the point that it's very hard. It's so hard to make it, and Brian Kelly made it. So while I have been hard on Notre Dame in the past, I always do preface it with saying, but he does do something at a consistent rate that not many teams do. He's now at LSU. They have a collection of talent down there that rivals anybody, plus Louisiana. We can talk about the defensive front, but they have a quarterback from Arizona State, Chris, that if everything is clicking, Jaden Daniels, if you remember when he was a freshman, he set college football on fire.
Yeah.
It was great.
They have a wide. Go ahead.
Keyshawn Bouillette. It's exactly what you're about to talk about. He might be the best or second best wide receiver in the nation behind Smith and Jigba at Ohio State. Mm-hmm. Those two are 1A, 1B. However you want to. If we're in a fantasy league right now and you get first pick and you pick Smith and Jigba, I'm going to shake your hand and take Bouillette. Right? And vice versa. You take Bouillette, I'm going to shake your hand and I'm going to take Smith and Jigba. I digress. Not only do they have Bouillette, but Jaden Daniels, I don't know who he is as a quarterback, because how can we possibly gauge Jaden Daniels whenever he had that much chaos going on at Arizona State? All those investigations, all the uncertainty at coaching, this, that, and the other. If he can get it together, he's going to be a threat because his game is very serious. So go ahead.
I was just going to chime in. Can he be the most talented quarterback that Brian Kelly has ever coached, or that he's coached in the last decade?
That's going to be tough, because part of me does want to say yes, man. But at the same time, me just instantly coming out and saying that is also kind of disregarding the lack of development we did see out of Jaden Daniels. But at the same time, because there's this caveat as to Arizona State being a literal dumpster fire with all these investigations, right? Like that's not a place you can develop. He could be like, he could set the nation on fire once again. Kind of whenever you ask me this question, to preface it, as Oklahoma and Texas are about to make their way to the SEC, it's good that both teams are now recruiting in the way they do. I understand Oklahoma fans, Texas always recruits well. You're right. You're certainly not wrong, but they've kind of figured out how to recruit more successfully for success on the field. And I don't need to talk about what Oklahoma's doing on the trail, right? I'm going to have a video coming out in the next 50 minutes, right? It's just on a timer right now for that topic right there. Y'all are recruiting at such a high clip. You can come into the SEC and be recruiting at this level. That's not going to change anything. The SEC is about to be so strong, it's unreal. When you add in OU and Texas, it's going to be fireworks. And I want to hear your opinion on this. I've never understood the SEC fans who are mad at the addition of Texas and OU. If we look at the top 10 biggest brands in college football, the SEC just added 2 more. How could you possibly be mad at those additions? That only adds to the legitimacy of the SEC. And if you're an SEC fan, that furthers your ends. I've only ever thought this was an overwhelmingly positive move.
So let's kind of compare and contrast, or just put these two things out there together right now. Okay. Word on the street is that Oregon, Washington, those teams are going to be headed to the Big Ten. So that's just kind of the word on the street. That's kind of what we already figured, already kind of pretty much knew. That's the assumption, right? So about a month, about 2.5 months ago or so, the news breaks that USC and UCLA will be going to the Big Ten, right? That was oh, wow, really? They're going there? That wasn't as big as Texas and OU going to the SEC. That was oh, wow, it's really happening. SEC is about to take over college football. Yada, 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 yada. This means more to college football than what USC and UCLA are going to bring to the Big Ten. The Big Ten is just expanding. They're on an expansion tour. The SEC is on a conquest. They are out there to conquer this thing called college football.
And God forbid the SEC picks up Clemson, Miami, and Florida State. If they add in those 3 right there, I just don't know what to tell you. Because at that point, it's just like, dear Lord, man, your biggest brands are all right here. Now, I'm not going to diminish an Oregon, a Washington, and a USC. USC's down. I get it. But if I'm thinking best case scenario, which in an example like this, we almost have to, right? Even me looking at Florida State right now, I have to think best case scenario, what could be. USC adds a lot to wherever they go. If they were to come to the SEC, I'd be singing the praises. In a best case scenario, they have to get there. It's still not the same as what the SEC is doing right now. And maybe I'm just biased towards the SEC. I'll certainly float that out there as a possibility. But even the people I talk to that aren't necessarily SEC guys are just like, yeah, the SEC right now is just different.
Yeah. I mean, my whole thing is that I think that both conferences are going to pit themselves against each other. Yeah. And I think that like we said, there's going to be a bidding war that may not even be a winner in the bidding war, but we all know Notre Dame is going to be the chess piece. And so I think that if you're the SEC and you can get Texas, OU, and let's say that you only get Miami, and Clemson, but miss out on Florida State. Well, hell, if you go and get Notre Dame, you pretty much taking kind of
that's checkmate
chunk out of the Big Ten. That's right there in Big Ten country.
That's checkmate. Yeah, if they add Notre Dame, Clemson, and Miami, that's checkmate. It's done.
Yeah.
And that's with all respect to Ohio State, Michigan State, Wisconsin, and the great teams within the Big Ten. But
now I will say, I think that some of the SEC fans who are upset about OU and Texas coming in, I think it's because of recency bias. I think it's because, well, Texas is no good. Texas hasn't done anything in the last decade or so. And then also they would a lot of SEC fans would probably say, well, OU gets there, but they can't finish, So, I mean, I think it's mostly just recency bias. Yeah, but they get there.
And that's all. But see, that's the part that kills me, Chris. And I've had people comment that, and luckily, man, I've been so blessed on my channel where even people who will be like, "Oh, I completely disagree with your take." Once I interact with them, we might not see eye to eye, but we at least have an understanding of where we come from, which on the internet is so rare. Which is why my community has been just such a blessing. But I've had SEC fans say like, "Oh, but they can't win a playoff game," and I was like, "Yeah, but you're now going to be a fan of a conference that has how many teams that regularly have made it to college football playoff games? That's only strengthening your conference. How could you be mad at that? I don't care that they didn't win a national championship. I don't care that they didn't get to a national championship. They made it to the college football playoffs, and that is incredibly difficult to do.
And this may piss off a lot of people, me saying this, but I'll say it. I think that the SEC for the better part of, well, especially our fandom, has been top heavy. Let's just be real. A lot of SEC teams, they have SEC traditions, but they don't have the SEC winning bias that everybody believes that the SEC just has. Because you look at a Vanderbilt, you look at a Mississippi State, hell, even an Ole Miss. Those teams aren't playing for national championships every year, year in and year out. They're just in the SEC, and it's different. We get that.
Yeah.
However, when you go out there and you add teams like Texas A&M and Texas in a Missouri, and Missouri being one of the teams has had success in the SEC instantly when they came in, it just begs the question: are we that much better off? So when you add a team like OU that has 7 national championships, 50 bowl wins, all the rest of that stuff, 30 conference championships, all of that. I mean, you're just adding more lore to your
no doubt
to your league. Yeah. I mean,
and the one thing we need to realize with Missouri, they came at the perfect time, right? Like people don't credit A&M and Missouri for the effect they had on the SEC. The SEC was great, but they were almost antiquated, right? Like what they were running was almost antiquated. In comes A&M and Missouri. And whenever you have this modern offense really picking apart the weaknesses of this traditional defense, they made the whole SEC catch up. So those 2 additions were great for the longevity of the SEC. So that's why when I look at Texas and Oklahoma, I'm like, hey, the last time they made this expansion, it was great for the conference in terms of what it evolved the conference into. Now Bama runs the spread and is going to drop 55 on your head. Like before Missouri and A&M got there, we were like, Bama's going to score 14, 21 points, and you're not going to score a point. Now we're saying Bama's about to drop 55 on your head, and they're still going to have a great defense. Well, that's because of the evolution that was forced to occur. I just don't understand how it's a possible bad thing.
I don't think that it's a bad thing. I just think that people are they're reluctant to change, and that's all it is. I think that with the college football world going as it is, I think a lot of people are still pretty hesitant on the whole NIL, the idea, the premise, and even just the overall thing that is NIL. I think college expansion is kind of you still have a lot of traditionalists out there, people who are, well, that's messing up these rivalries, the Mike Gundys of the world, right? So you have those people who are, well, they took their money and they ran or they're doing this, and you're like, no, we're just forging new history and new traditions now. So I think that, change is not always great, but it's not always bad either.
Yeah.
So as you would say, there's 2 truths that can exist here. So let's before we get out of here, let's talk some football today.
Man, let's talk about this Nebraska Northwestern game. Have you ever seen It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Chris?
Yes.
So that's probably my favorite show that's ever existed. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but I have shirts that say Kelly and Associate Bird Law. I've got a shirt with Danny DeVito on it, and it says Derivative. And then I have another shirt with Danny DeVito on it, and it says Dr. Mantis Toboggan. So yeah, I love that show. But this whole time we've been talking, I feel like that episode of Charlie when he's in the mail room. It's like, I've been dying to talk about the mail. Can we talk about the mail? I've been waiting all day to talk about the mail. That's how I feel about this Nebraska Northwestern game, because Nebraska is one of the best 3-8 teams I've ever seen in my life last year. Like, they had how many games decided by 1 score, and they shot themselves in the foot time after time after time. Against Oklahoma, they played y'all really, really well. Missed opportunities, right? Like they would put themselves in a position to maybe make a run at something, and then they would blow it, right? And then Oklahoma just proved to be too much. But that was kind of the theme of the season. They're going to put themselves in a position to make a chance at a game, and then they're going to blow it, whether it's due to penalties, whether it's due to special teams. I mean, it was painful. But this is a test for Scott Frost. He gets in a lot through the transfer portal. Number 1 JUCO running back in the nation. Casey Thompson out the transfer portal. O'Shawn Mathis gets some wide receivers, gets some just pieces they desperately need. Defense is coming in. You brought up earlier, Whipple's the new face there. And the offense, that's going to be huge for the passing game. They beat Northwestern down last year. I mean, they decimated them. If you're Scott Frost, this is a do or die year for you. Like, your job depends on this season. He has been statistically, if I'm not mistaken, one of the worst Nebraska coaches ever. That's a proud team. And I get it. For the younger fans out there, you don't remember the Nebraska of old, but when I was young, right, growing up, I remember Eric Crouch. You're right. You remember that name at quarterback? I remember those defenses. I remember those Nebraska teams, and they were fantastic. That fan base wants to get back there, and this year is do or die for Scott Frost. And what a better way to kick off week 0 than by a game that could literally be season defining. That's awesome. I love it.
This game is near and dear to my heart simply because my dad will be watching. He's a huge Nebraska fan.
My dad was a huge Nebraska fan.
It's hilarious. So I woke up this morning probably around about 5 or 6, and I texted him. I said, "Hey, Nebraska's getting destroyed today." I was like, Northwestern,
that's heartbreaking.
Cass Fitzgerald. What is even a match? Aren't they like the Wildcats or whatnot? Are they? What are? Yeah,
Northwestern Wildcats. Yep.
Go Cats. Go Cats.
Got a beautiful facility up there.
So all jokes aside, so I think this is a really interesting matchup. OU fans, if you didn't have plans to watch, you need to watch this game. They're not going to be able to keep it just strictly vanilla out there against Northwestern, because for as bad, that's another team. We need to trademark this term. They're either consistently good or consistently bad. There's no in between,
but they're always consistently well coached under Pat Fitzgerald,
and that will always describe Northwestern under Pat Fitzgerald. There's a reason why why a lot of NFL teams were interested in having him come to have them come and coach in the league. I think that this Nebraska game in the Northwestern game, I think it's going to be a really good game. I don't know, maybe the first one to 17 points, who can eclipse that? Maybe that's the team that wins, but I think that you will see some good football today, and I think you'll see maybe some rust, but I'm going to keep an eye on what Whipple will be scheming up for Casey Thompson and Bunch. If you guys don't know who we're talking about with Whipple was the offensive coordinator for Pitt last year and helped Kenny Pickett do what he's doing now. So, with that being said, I'm going to pay attention to the play calls and just see how many times do they run it? How many times do they pass it? Go ahead, Ty.
Here's the interesting thing, man. I'm so glad you brought that up. There's also another layer to this Whipple thing. I don't know if you watched my Nebraska Northwestern preview, but whenever Whipple left Pitt, Narduzzi did not let him leave quietly. Do you remember that whole saga? Pat Narduzzi, the head coach of Pitt, came out and was basically dragging Whipple and saying, this is a guy who will completely abandon the run game and just pass. So Narduzzi hasn't just had glowing reviews of Whipple because of that. And because when you look at this game last year and Nebraska beat down Northwestern, how did they do it? They did it on the ground. They ran it down Northwestern's throat. I love what you just said about watching how Whipple does play calling. I would bet money right now he's going to be running at a high clip just to prove a point to college football. I'm very excited for this because of that.
Nebraska's pretty excited about their running backs. They have kind of like a third down back, kind of a power back.
And then they get the JUCO back.
Yeah, and then they got another kid that they're pretty excited about. He's kind of their Swiss Army knife, where they kind of want to put him all over. And
Good
so,
edge talent too.
yeah,
They got a lot in edge rushers.
I think that Nebraska is going to come out there and have a really good defensive front. I think they're going to play good on the back end. I think what they're going to try to do, they're still going to have that gadget effect. I call them, like I said last year when they played OU, they're in Tulane, Nebraska, the West Virginias of the world. They ran in Kansas State. They run a lot of gadget plays. It's a lot of, hey,
misdirection.
Yeah, misdirection, a lot of different stuff where you're going this way, but now where the play is actually designed to come here. It's kind of like Sark, because Sark runs a lot of, to be honest with you, when like being
Sark
there,
runs pre-snap motion at an incredible rate,
yeah,
especially orbit motion. He loves and I love orbit motion.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's great.
So like with Sark is running a lot of deep crossers. And I thought it was really misdirection. I was like, no, he's just running deep crossers all over the field.
His route layering is
Worthy is lined up by himself, but he's doing a crosser. But you don't understand that they're doing kind of like a stop and go, but their routes are turning into a crosser as well. And it's an option
high-low
on top of it.
Yeah.
So you see now why people were so confused whenever he was at Bama, because you're like, damn, he just had all that speed and talent, and their release was crazy. They were able to get open, and you couldn't stop him. And you can't double team one person simply because if you double team, if you double team,
when he was at Bama, Devontae Smith, you got Jalen Waddle standing over there.
Exactly. Manchi, Billingsby, all of them were in the mix. So I mean, you had, and then the running game.
That wide receiver room was dumb.
Yeah, you just put people on the islands and told them, yeah, you can come and load the box. I'm just gonna throw it over the top, and my guys are gonna be open, or play me straight up and leave the lanes open, and I'm just gonna have them run all over you. I mean,
yeah, Najee Harris is the running back, right?
Exactly.
It's just like, dear God.
Exactly.
Wild.
So I think that Nebraska. So here's the X factor to me. I think it's going to be interesting to see what Whipple schemes up and what he does. But I think the X factor for this game is, what the hell does Northwestern do offensively? Do they try to go east and west like they like to do? Because they run a lot of stuff that's just east and west. They like to work the intermediate passing game. They'll take the occasional shot here and there, but it's going to be a short pass. They like to work the field, do the short pass game, and then it's a lot of inside run. They heavily focus on the inside run game. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that pretty much is all that I've ever seen from Northwestern.
Yeah, so Northwestern, that's a very, and to add on that, as interested as you are in the offense, I'm equally as interested in the defense. Jimmo, new hire last season for them, he came in and brought in that 4-2-5 that San Francisco runs. He was with the San Francisco 49ers before, and that 4-2-5, I mean, it's going to be a really solid defense, but he didn't have time to properly implement it, and Northwestern was getting dragged running that 4-2-5 nickel. So they changed it, right? They changed it to a 4-3, if I'm not mistaken. It was either a 4-3 or a 3-4, but for some reason I think that it was a 4-3 because it makes more sense to transition from a 4-2-5 to a 4-3. But I'm wondering this year if he goes back to that 4-2-5 now that he has another offseason, and if they can successfully do that. Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, they lost pretty much everybody off that defensive front except your boy's brother, Adebayore's brother, is still on the defensive line for Northwestern. He's that dude on their defensive line. They got two guys out the transfer portal that need to be watched. They're going to provide great depth, but Adebayore is the only one on that defensive line who returns.
What about didn't they lose a safety or something to the transfer portal?
Notre Dame?
Yeah,
the transfer portal. Really good safety to Notre Dame. Yeah. So it's something they've got to watch, and I'm just so interested in Northwestern because I do have a bit of a soft spot for Northwestern. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, they're one of the teams. I have probably 15 teams in college football where I'm like, Man, I want all teams to do good, but I really would like to see you do well, right? And Northwestern is just one of them.
I have a hard. That was about to come off all wrong, but I have a. I have
yeah,
a.
no, I
I have a pretty. I have a
pause.
pretty. I have a pretty hateful spot for some teams out there. USC, Texas,
Yeah, that was
Texas
about to come off the
A&M,
exact opposite way you wanted it to.
OSU. Yeah, that would be
Yeah,
awesome.
that was about to be the complete opposite of what you were wanting. You were about to be sending the wrong message.
But
That Kchris, he's a freak. He really loves college football.
I think this game is going to be pretty. It's going to be pretty interesting. Another game that OU fans you should probably pay attention to as well is this UTEP versus North Texas. It seems
My alma mater.
that's North Texas seems. I don't know. They're 1.5. They're 1.5 point favorite in this game. I think UTEP. It's going to be interesting. We had Adrian Broadus on the other day. He is a reporter for them. He does 600 ESPN radio out there in El Paso, and so he calls their games. And I had him on like a week or two ago, and so he was talking about them. And it should be an interesting game. I think they're like literally 2,000 or 3,000 tickets away from selling that game out, which is, I mean, that's huge for it. It's huge. So,
yeah, and I went to a UNT game last year when they played Marshall because I really wanted to see Grant Wells, Marshall's quarterback, because I think he's got really nice upside. Whether it all comes together or not is interesting, but I really enjoy watching Grant Wells play. In fact, one of my first YouTube videos ever made was that when Grant Wells was a true freshman, I thought he had the most impressive debut on a week one of any true freshman quarterback. So I've been following Grant Wells closely since then, but also because Charles Huff, right, is the coach at Marshall. He's a former Bama guy.
yeah.
When I went and watched that game, Kchris, I genuinely think UNT broke the NCAA record for penalties in a half. It was the hardest thing to watch because as much as I love football, I can't stand bad football. That's bad football. Penalties is bad football. It's just like, dude, you can't get out of your own way. And it was so tough to watch. So I'll believe North Texas when I see it. They've got the ability. God only knows how we're not better. And yes, I'm saying we're because I did go to the University of North Texas. So I do own some of this shame. I don't understand how we're not better whenever we're located in Denton. OU is planted in Denton. Y'all might as well have a house right across the street from me for all the kids y'all pull out of Denton. And somehow UNT can't pull any of them. We have Denton Ryan, Denton Geyer. We have all of these schools near us. Allen, you can damn near hit with the football from my house. Not really. It's like 30 minutes away, but you get the point. Like we're in the best, one of the best areas in the country, this DFW Metroplex. And
y'all gotta lock down Frisco, Little Elm. You gotta lock it all down.
I don't get it, man. I don't get it.
Dyer. Y'all gotta go out there to Argyle. Y'all gotta lock it all down there.
It's so frustrating, man, because you just look and it's like everything's perfect for you. You have so much in terms, and I don't know why they're not killing the transfer portal. I would be, man, you don't want to know what I'd be doing with the transfer portal.
Now, I think this is a good segue because there's a team out there that is playing a Duquesne tonight that I'm interested to know about because we talked about Scott Frost on this channel.
On the hot
Let's talk about Mike Norvell down there at Florida State. I mean, who survives this season as head coach? Mike Norvell or Scott Frost? I think Norvell. Honestly, I would throw in option C. Neither.
I think Norvell probably has a longer leash just because I don't think he's been there as long. Right? Like I think. What is this, year 3 for Norvell?
Yeah, year 3, and they are calling for his. They called for his job last year. I think you saw the Twitter space. You had to at least see the Twitter space after they lost Travis Hunter.
when Kieran hopped on there and trolled them all. Yeah, that was great. Yeah, I do remember that. That was fantastic. Look, even though I'm going to maintain, I think that Norvell might have a bit of a longer leash. I don't know by how much. I don't, because I'm a promise you this right here. If Nebraska loses this game, I don't know what will save Scott Frost's season outside of upsetting OU. I don't know what will do it outside of upsetting OU and just having a terror through the Big Ten.
Does he even make it through the first 5 games of the season? A lot of people think that if he loses any of these games and then loses to OU in week 3, it's over.
Well, look, if he wins week 1, week 2, I'm not going to hold it against him for losing to OU because I think that OU is just a better team right now than Nebraska. Now that being said, they better play y'all well. They better lose by within 10 points, and it better be a good game. Because if it's not a good game, then I really don't have much to save you on. But I do think OU's in a better place right now. They recruit better. They had better additions out the transfer portal. I'm not going to be too hard on Frost for that Nebraska game unless they just get decimated by OU, and then that's bad. But yeah, no, man, like I don't know how Scott Frost is going to make it out of this season unless they have a great year. It is that necessary for Nebraska.
It's hard for me to say either one because I think Mike Norvell, he never, as soon as he got there, things weren't right. I mean, you had players coming out left and right about stuff, like some of their top players. It was just hard. And then just Scott Frost has just been 4-8, 4-8, 4-8, or whatever the case may be. They've had seasons where they had really high expectations and it just faltered. So I'm not sure. I don't think either coach makes it this year.
I wouldn't be surprised if neither of them made it to next year.
Ty, I think that's the video that we need to do a little joint collab on. Top 10 coaches on the hot seat.
That could be super interesting. Because, I got a bit of a hot take. I'm not gonna say it because I don't think the coach is possibly on the hot seat, right? And so that's why
save the content.
Yeah. I'll tell you when we get out of here. But there is a coach I'm looking at where it's just like, man,
Well, ladies and gentlemen, college football is back. Again, I'll say it one more time. We are living in a weird world in a weird time when Nebraska is playing a primetime game. Hell, Northwestern is playing a primetime game. But you never know. Northwestern was in the Big Ten championship just 2 years ago. So I think that we need to kind of I'll back off at that point a little bit. But
Northwestern's they've been really impressive, man. I don't think a lot of people really, like the casual fan, I don't think they realize how good Pat Fitzgerald's Northwesterns have been. Absent last year, but
it all boils down to the quarterback play for him.
Yeah. Helinski.
They plug and pull it when it comes to the running back position, but other than that, running back, wide receivers. But when it comes to the quarterback play, that's what it boils down to. I think Helinski is the quarterback out there, right? Kid from South Carolina.
Think he's going to be, yeah.
Okay. Well, you guys heard it here first. Ty, if you guys just tuned in, Ty said earlier that Spencer Rattler will win the Heisman this year.
To end, I'm so excited for Rattler, man. Reuniting with Beamer. I'm really excited for him. I think this is what his career needed.
I think that they're going to have a damn good season. But we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. Ty, you got anything else to say? Anything else we missed?
So just a bit of an announcement from my channel, right? Something that is going to be very fun because the season is here. The weekly live streams, they're going to double. We're going to be doing a live stream every Monday and probably Friday. Monday live streams, we're going to be taking on the weekend that just happened. And the Friday live streams, we're going to be really focusing on the weekend to come. 2 live streams every single week. And I can't wait to see y'all there.
All right. That's the announcement then. We'll be there. And then me and Seth are invited, right? We can come on?
Oh, bro, you already know.
Okay. I just making sure. So, yeah, everybody tune into that. Ty, go ahead. Give me 1 second. Let me put that banner up here. Go ahead, tell everybody where they can find you at.
Yeah, so I run the YouTube channel Around the Table Sports. I do constant college football content. I just eat, sleep, breathe college football. So y'all hear the ramblings in my mind that my girlfriend and my fiance can no longer stand to stomach anymore because it's just this is me 24/7, 365. So I'd love to have you join the community. It really is an awesome place.
Y'all listen, man. College football season is here. I'm so excited. I've been working my ass off every single day from like 9 to about 6 p.m. I'm like, you know what? Make sure I have everything done so I can chill. Can't wait for next Thursday. Get to hit it off. I'm gonna watch OSU lose to Central Michigan and watch all the rest of the games. Saturday, we're reeing up, but it's going down. It's a lot of exciting content that's about to come out from Around the Table Sports, from the Horns Down podcast, and everybody else in our YouTube community. Guys, tune in. It's going down. Ty, we got to do this again, man. We may Saturdays may have to be something, maybe a shorter show, but we may have to be something for as far as just kind of tuning up, have our own little game day show. So,
man, you know me, and any chance I get to talk college football, if I have availability, I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna be there. Yeah.
All right. Well, people, we are out. Horns down.